Hi, I'm Ivan.
And I'm Shawn.
And together we are the co-founders of
Quadrant.
So today we'll be talking about a very interesting topic, which is properties. Are properties no longer the best retirement investment in Singapore?
Yeah, so just very recently, I think in the mid of October, basically DBS came out with this crazy report and it's been blasted out across Business Times, Straits Times, whatever times I can think of, right? That basically says this one thing is that property has always been basically a wealth accumulation strategy for most Singaporeans, yeah? Especially the older generation. So then, of course, they explore down to, of course, how about the younger generation? Will it still work in today's perspective? And then they came out with three main pointers, alright? And the first pointer is this, is that they are saying that new properties are getting smaller and smaller, but yet it's getting more and more expensive, right? Which is bad, alright? However, the main thing over here is that they are saying that property prices outgrows our income growth. What do you think about that?
Okay, so actually there are 2 points that you have to talk about, which is first, new properties are getting smaller and smaller. That is absolutely right.
Yeah.
But the thing is, why not we just invert and think the other way around? You can always be buying old properties.
Yes,
and
yes.
old properties are bigger, no bay window if you go for the even older generation. So,
Yeah.
okay what?
Yeah, so I think it's a lot more into what is suitable for you and your family. I would say that there will definitely be a group that will be very willing to stay in a little bit slightly more premium location, a newer building, a newer place, but yet they sacrifice in terms of living so-called space, right? And this has been seen across many countries. So you're seeing like the one bedder now is like 200 square feet. So that is like the normal size for them, you think about it, right? So I think humans are basically adaptable, right? When it gets more expensive, of course, that's when things need to start building smaller. So we already know that humans are adaptable based on other countries' perspective. But how about the fact that, of course, I think at the end of the day, property price will only grow if someone is willing to pay for it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and of course, the income cannot afford it, or someone cannot afford it, then no one pay for it. No one pay for it, then the property price will technically stagnate or drop. What do you think about that?
So I agree that you need a sufficient income to sustain the property market growth. But the thing is, once again, right, when you say that property investment, like the income is not sustainable, all this, right, this is a more across the board statement. Yeah. So I would rather look at it again, like actually it's the same point whereby you can actually look at the resale market, because in the resale market there'll be property prices that's going for lower per square feet, lower quantum. It can still be very affordable.
Yes. And not to mention, I think we talk about property as an overall first. I think 79% of the population stays in HDB, where the government is doing a really great job to, of course, make sure that HDB becomes as affordable as possible, at least for the younger generation. So that is the country's strategy to make sure that property is affordable. But let's talk about the investment point of view. The investment point of view, that means we are largely looking at the private properties, right? And the private properties, since it's on a 20 to 21% of the entire 100% pie, that means you think about it, you think of it in the context, right? When we talk about income, right, and affordability, shouldn't we also look at the top 20% to 30% income earners?
Yes, you are absolutely right. Because when we are talking about the income, right, or the number of people that is like buying private properties, right, it should be in the top 30% range, right?
Yeah.
Roughly about there. So if you're looking at income, right, a quick tip, right, is actually to look at people who are in the top 30% income bracket range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we want to base the affordability based on this 20 to 30% top cost income earner. Yeah, but just a fun fact, guys, just a fun fact, is that you know that if you use a median household income, basically all median household will be able to afford a million over dollar property. That's a fun fact for you guys. Yeah?
Based on total debt and servicing ratio?
Yeah, based on total debt servicing ratio, number one, and based on just CPF contribution. So just on this fact, we know that Singaporeans can well afford a $1 million property. So now the key here is how much can it stretch to, yeah? So of course, if you ask me, is property prices today too expensive? I would say the reality is that demand is still there, right? If demand is still there, alright, new launches are being wiped out, then I would say that generally Singaporeans are still able to afford it. And if still able to afford it, now the key thing here is, of course, is basically to ensure that property price do not outgrow to the point that it becomes a potential bubble. But that is why government comes down this whole TDSR to actually protect the citizens and ensure that we do not really overspend.
And on top of this, right, if you look at evidence, right, which is one of the new launch, which is your voice mentioned, it actually sold out 98% on the launch day itself. So this is a very, very strong indication, right, of the piping hot demand in Singapore.
Yes, which comes down to point number 2, right, that the DBS reported, actually is that number 1 is that, of course, once again, income outgrow the, property price outgrow the income, yeah? Number 2 is actually that property might not be the demand in future because if you look at the trajectory of Singapore's population growth, all right, by 2045, Singapore population is expected to be peak. And why is this a main thing? Is because property ultimately serves as a home, which means that if there isn't a population increase, then of course property price will just naturally be stagnant as well. What do you think about this?
Oh, Shawn, that's a very, very good question. So, well, one thing that we always say about Singapore is limited land. Obviously, Singapore is an island, and we can't like expand too much in terms of accumulation of land. But on top of this, right, 2045 is quite far away, like 25 years away. Yeah.
So my take exactly my thoughts, right? So you talk about 25 years away, guys. 25 years away, then 25 years later, then think about it lah. You go and make the money for the next 25 years first. Let's put it in that perspective, right? At the point of time, of course, if you're to take action today, in 25 years time, your property is likely going to be fully paid at the point of time, right? Of course, at that point of time, you can choose to sell, then invest into other investment asset vehicle where it's growing as well, right? Or you can choose to, of course, stick to in property if you are really very comfortable with your life.
But to be frank, right, I will expect that even it may be said that population will stop growing in 2045. But the thing is, things may change along the way.
Yeah.
Like
Maybe plans change.
Yeah, government plan
better
changes.
Immigration policies.
Yes. So one thing that's for sure, like the lifespan of everyone is getting longer. Okay, so what would happen? There will be more people that is like older that will be still around, and they need a home, and there will be more young people. So just because of an aging population, right, we may need more and more homes to stay if we are able to keep the immigration coming in for Singapore itself. And by the way, when you just look at the overall policy or the overall picture in Singapore, not policy but picture, you see with the aging population, right, a lot of elderly people, right, will still be around in Singapore, but you still need a workforce. So for this workforce, right, these have to come from immigration, and with this, right, you are having to fulfill the homes for both sides.
Yes, of course, with higher immigration, since if we continue the ABSD policy, that's where most of them will probably then find it better to rent as compared to purchase. That, of course, that serves as a baseline for potential renters as well. Yeah, and of course, and point number 3 that DBS of course pointed out is this one thing is that instead of investing in property, why don't they invest in other asset class which is more liquidable and have a better return? So they compare it with, of course, the S&P 500, which basically just means that you put into this fund, all right, that actually invests into the top 500 companies in US lah, in the States, right? So that's S&P 500, okay? So basically they're saying that S&P 500 outperforms the property one by investing in Singapore property on a leverage perspective by about 40 to 50%. So $100 will become like $600 versus in property become $400, right? So it outperforms, right? So what do you think about this?
I would say it's not wrong in the sense that you investing in shares and stocks, right, can be a very rewarding investment in the long term. But the thing is this: you make sure you need to know what you are investing in. The first of all, right, or two, right, if you will be investing in like the S&P, you will be compounding and doing dollar cost average over time. But the thing is this: as a Singaporean, when we are able to buy properties, right, one of the key aspects, right, is actually we are able to use our CPF to help pay for the monthly installments, okay? And because of this, right, we are able to compound at a higher rate than the 2.5%, right, in the CPF OA itself.
Exactly, right? So as mentioned, I think if you talk about you just having your OA contribution from employee, let's say assuming husband plus wife, once again, if you're just using your CPF OA to pay off your mortgage on a monthly basis, right, actually, as I said, you can easily afford $1 million property without even coming out $1 in cash. Yeah, it's just based on the average household income. Right? Of course, then every additional dollar that you want to go for, that is when it comes to affordability in terms of your take-home pay. But I want to also touch into this thing called conviction of investment as well. I think many of us might be fearful to put in $250,000, $500,000 into the stock market, especially if you are not that well versed in the stock market. It can be a very scary move for us. So I give one very simple example, right? I think some of us, maybe if you're so new to the stock market, we might feel that putting 50,000, 100,000 into the stock market can be very scary. Even though if this investment asset grows faster, all right, but yet by the end result, if you don't put in as much money as you put in the property, the end result is that the property will still make more. So what do you mean by this? Right? So assuming you put 300k in the property, it grows at times 2%, right? Versus put 50,000 into stock market, then it grows 3x plus 3x, right? Of course, then you make more in property as compared to in stock. Just from this basis of the fact that, you know what? How many of us, if you're talking about investing on life savings, you feel comfortable to just put everything in the stock market? I would say in the general population, very few people is able to do that. And because very few people is able to do that, many still find comfort in putting in property where the returns are still decent. Of course, not as good as S&P 500 in this scenario, I totally agree. But just from the fact that it makes them feel more comfortable, growing at a 2x, 3x, 4x is still very good comparing to them thinking that they need to take a risk to potentially go through volatility and of course having a higher returns.
Well, ultimately, when we invest, right, we want to make sure that we are able to sleep soundly.
Yeah, exactly.
Night.
Yeah.
And if you look at the real estate class, right, basically it's an income-producing asset because even if the price of the asset doesn't appreciate, you still get rental income, which is actually profits. So not too bad, what?
Yes. So why is Ivan saying that? It's because very simple. If you think about it, if we put a down payment, okay, and of course we're buying for investment purposes, we are going to rent out the property. If you can take a rental to cover our mortgage, or at least a majority of the mortgage, after 25 years or 30 years, depending on how long of a loan you take, just take the rental, pay off your mortgage, and ultimately this property is going to be fully paid. Yeah, so that is why no matter, even if the property price do not go up a single dollar, your tenant will ultimately be paying your property in full because all you have put down is the down payment. So that is the basic strategy of property investment, which just serve as the what we call the bare minimum of your gains.
Okay, so Shawn, I think it's best that we have some conclusion, which is even in this scenario, right, that for example, real estate may not offer you the best gain in the S&P, right, versus the S&P. How would you allocate your portfolio?
Yeah, I think of course I will. How I allocate it is actually personally I will allocate it in a currently now I'm at an 80-20 ratio, where 80% still in stable. That means property. Yeah. So I go a lot more into capital protection route as in today's perspective. And of course, do watch our video when we talk about portfolio allocation. Just do click on the link to find out a little bit more in terms of how I allocate my portfolio and how, of course, Ivan allocate his own portfolio as well. We have different ideas, perspective. Everyone should have a different allocation depending on your family needs and your own personal risk and reward ratio.
For my personal portfolio allocation strategy, right, do watch out the link that Shawn has shared, right, and we'll see you soon. Okay, so once again, I'm Ivan.
I'm Shawn.
If you like this video, make sure you subscribe and give us a thumbs up. Okay, so we'll see you. Bye.